Most families set up a trust and think everything's done, but there are potential problems. It could be an irrevocable trust when it should be an irrevocable trust. We need to think about what we're trying to accomplish when we do estate planning with trusts and how we can protect assets if, in fact, that is part of our goals.
You have to have clarity on what you're trying to do and if, in fact, the trust that you're creating actually solves that problem. They're complicated, they're confusing, and they're really hard for people to, without being trained.
The average person to do. So the result could be litigation, right? It could be litigatable, could be not protected from taxes, and it all depends on your situation. For high net worth families, there are things that they want to do that are more strategic in nature rather than planning in nature. So as advisors who help wealthy families try to plan around these things and protect their wealth, I think it's important to talk about structuring your assets and your trusts to match your plan. Over time, we've seen firsthand how different people could be affected differently if they weren't planned for correctly, and the things that they thought were in fact not solved.
Don't you find that over the years, people have misconceptions about trust? They thought they would do certain things and clearly they don't. And you don't know how these fallacies get started, and over time, there's a lot more trust options for people to flesh through. So it's really important to have clarity on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to create.
Think about it like this. Trust is like saying vehicle. And if I said, hey, Sam, can I borrow your vehicle? And you bring over your sports car and you say, well, I got to move my piano over my daughter's house.
Oh, you wanted my SUV.
It's not the right vehicle. So vehicles can have a lot of different structures, and I think it's important that you build the vehicle that you need. If you're needing moving a piano, an SUV, or a van. If I want to get from A to B really fast, bring me the sports car. Not knowing these things, and again, what is it? Not asking the right questions, again, is something that can blow the whole plan. So the silent threat or misconception is that, I think there are a couple. One is everybody needs a trust, and in fact, that's not true. Then the misconception is if I have a trust, then I have a trust and I'm protected, and that's not exactly true either. Every trust has a specific, very personalized approach to this. So there are things like revocable and irrevocable trusts. They come with different levels of protection. You may not want protection. If it's irrevocable, you're giving something up. And we're going to talk about these things today.
And different tax consequences as well that are very misunderstood.
We want to make sure that the high net worth families that are watching this are saying to themselves, is this something I need? Is it something that I want? Is it something I'm willing to pay for?
Or is it something I should even explore and get more information on?
Or find somebody that has the right questions to ask. So we don't want you to be left vulnerable at the most difficult time.
This video is for educational purposes only. Always consult professionals before making legal, tax, and investment decisions.
So according to Stephen Ocean's DAPT, Domestic Asset Protection Trust state rankings, Nevada and South Dakota are ranked as the top 2 domestic asset protection trusts.
I didn't see South Dakota coming.
Well, you never know what you don't know. Nevada's probably not a surprise. Now, asset protection trusts are there to protect assets. It's a trust that's typically irrevocable, right? Revocable versus irrevocable. Revocable means I can revoke it, I can change it. Irrevocable typically means that I can't.
So once it's in place, it's in place. You can't displace it.
That's right.
Revocable, you can revoke it. You can change it.
Revocable trust, sometimes called living trust. And again, they can be put into place for a number of different reasons. So,
and state by state, it may make more sense than other states.
And if you live in Pennsylvania like we do, could you set up a domestic asset protection trust in another state? You can. You can change what they call the situs of the trust. So the ultra wealthy aren't just setting up trusts, they're choosing the right type. And it's a very precision, very surgical approach to doing this. So when you're serious about long-term asset protection, you've got to think about, where do I do it? How do I do it? What am I giving up? So let's break down some of the core differences in the structure. So the first, let's talk about a revocable trust. Revocable trust means I could change it. Again, called a living trust. In some states, most people have trusts. In other states, hardly anybody has trust. It depends on where you live. In Pennsylvania, we are a state that doesn't, a trust isn't that important. As our clients relocate from Pennsylvania to other states, we work with outside counsel in there and let them determine. We work with their counsel to determine the merits of having a trust versus not.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things about a revocable trust is you can flat out cancel it. You can get rid of it. Irrevocable, not so much.
Right. And again, I think another point, if you have a revocable trust or want a revocable trust, seek professional counsel. Do not do it online. Do not do it with a guy that's knocking on your door. There used to be guys in our area knocking on doors telling everybody they needed a trust. Hire a competent professional attorney who specializes in this type of law. So one of the reasons for revocable trusts, again, in the mainstream, would be to avoid probate. Again, this is more important in certain states, not so much in Pennsylvania. It organizes your assets. We could keep things tidy. It can be a little bit easier. Now, I think another area to think about is we have a lot of clients who are elderly and have no kids. And our worry for them is somebody stealing their money. So we can hire a trustee to be in charge of that money to try to help protect it for the long term. I think there's merit to that. Are there other ways to do it that might be less expensive? There are. You could do things with a power of attorney and naming the right people.
But accepting the role of power of attorney by somebody, that's a big job. It's a big ask to ask someone to be your power of attorney. And sometimes those people don't exist in people's lives and you have to move to a trustee relationship.
Well, sometimes they exist and don't want to do it. That's a great point. A lot of our clients who do not have kids might have a niece or a nephew or both. And, Ralphie and Lucy are going to inherit my money and they're going to take care of me when I'm old. And then they get old and Ralphie and Lucy say, hey, Paul, I'm okay making the big picture decisions. I want nothing to do with making big investment decisions. How do I let a professional outside of you guys who is bonded and licensed do that? And in that case, sometimes a trust and a trustee are viable. Now, trustees don't work for free, don't forget. And they can be a nuisance and there can be a lot of hassles. But I think the important point is we're talking about asset protection is that these revocable trusts do not offer asset protection. So for high net worth families, misunderstanding that could be very devastating. So again, not one size fits all, not one type fits all. So let's go on to irrevocable trust. And that's a trust you can't change. Once you do it, once you sign it, once you fund it, meaning put the assets into it or register the assets into it, you can't change it. And that's the reason it legally protects you. Because let's say that I put $1 million into an asset protection trust because I'm worried about lawsuits because I'm a neurosurgeon. And I put the money in there because it's irrevocable. I can't just say, hey, you know what? I need $100,000 that I want to go out and buy a new sports car. I'm limited. It has to be limited. So when you look at asset protection trust, anytime you're getting rid of something like liability, you are giving up some sort of flexibility. So what are the use cases for irrevocable trusts? Could be taxes, could be estate taxes, could be inheritance taxes too if you're state.
Protect your assets from litigation.
Medicaid, protection planning, it could be asset protection. Now, again, we talked about some of the risks, loss of control. If you improperly set them up, they're very, very difficult to change. So if you've got complicated holdings, that can pose other issues for you, complicated business holdings.
And they can be taxed pretty heavily internally depending on how the investments are set up.
And the income flow. So there are big potential tax problems. And again, the most important thing is that you get proper counsel, that you have people that are going to help you ask the right questions. It's all about asking the right questions. And I think the do-it-yourselfers, the people that don't have that, are not asking the right questions, the people that try to do it online. So when you think about this asset protection, there's a trade-off, and there's a tug-of-war between control and asset protection, and the scale slides.
The conflict is the benefits that you can receive and the control that you give up. You have to weigh the benefits versus the fact that lifetime, forever is a long time.
Forever's a long time.
And that's essentially the trade-off.
So one of the key insights is the more protection you want, the less control that you have. Let's look at some examples. How about somebody that might want to place a vacation home into an irrevocable trust. It might shield it from creditors. Remember, there are people in very high-risk professions, doctors, school bus driver owner.
And people that own businesses that are in risky businesses.
If we put the vacation home into the trust, it might be shielded from creditors, but what if we don't want the vacation home anymore? Do we lose the ability to sell it? I mean, you can't refinance it very easily. You can't sell it very easily. So what you might find is you wouldn't put all of your assets into some of these trusts, certainly not an irrevocable trust, because you wouldn't have any money to live and enjoy. And again, the problem is different for the guy that has $1 billion versus the guy that has $2 million or $5 million or $10 million, like the people we work with.
Yeah, and again, forever is a really long time. You think about how things can change in just 10 years. And then you say, how much can they change in the rest of my lifetime, which could be, many decades.
And then there's certain types of advanced use cases for things like domestic asset protection trusts or spousal lifetime access trusts or irrevocable life insurance trusts. They all have a need. There's a place for all of them. They are not one size fits all. Not everybody needs each and every one of these. So you might have several trusts. You might combine trusts with different needs for different things. But you've got to remember they require a lot of precision and exactness when you're drafting them. So it's got to be a professional that knows what they're doing.
Where you live matters.
Mm-hmm. The state. And that goes by state.
Yeah. And what you used the term situs, where the trust is located matters. You mentioned Nevada and South Dakota have some of the best
asset protection
abilities.
They offer privacy and asset protection and a little bit more trustee flexibility. And again, we're all looking for this combination of control and flexibility, and it's really dovetailing perfectly what it is you need to do. So we've got to consider the situs. I think that's an important question to ask, especially the more affluent that you might be. So, just a couple of quick examples. So one high net worth family that we encountered set up a revocable trust thinking that maybe we're going to get some asset protection, and there ended up being a lawsuit. And because the trust wasn't irrevocable, it was able to be garnered in the lawsuit, and it became a big problem for the family.
So what they maintained was flexibility and control, and what they gave up was what they were ultimately maybe looking for, asset protection, and it didn't work.
Yeah, and so we've got to be very careful. Another family created an irrevocable trust. They funded a life insurance policy with it to avoid estate taxes. Mom and dad died. The trust paid out millions of dollars to pay the estate tax for the family, and it worked out just perfectly. It was shielded from creditors. It was shielded from federal estate tax, and they used it to pay the estate tax. It was the design of it. They kind of pre-funded their estate taxes.
And that's a really popular and useful trust when you have net assets that are going to be subject to the federal estate tax laws. An irrevocable life insurance trust can be a great option.
Let's think about going back to all of you, the questions to ask. What is it that you're trying to protect?
What do you want a trust to do for you, essentially?
Is it for your kids? Is it to protect your kids from themselves? Is it to protect your kids from a high-risk, high-litigation job? Is it from a potential divorce? So what am I trying to protect it from, and who am I trying to protect it from? So then ask yourself, do I need a trust? Is it something that my current estate plan and situation warrants? Are your current trust structures adequate and appropriate for what you're trying to do? And then we've got to evaluate the state. This is the state that it's located in the appropriate state for you.
And is there a better state?
So I think you need to contact a specialist, somebody that specializes in estate planning, and probably somebody that may specialize in elder care planning. Elder care planning is just planning for old people, for lack of a better term. And so we can look at the multi-generational aspects of this. We can look at asset protection planning. And again, for the high net worth individuals, the incremental cost in legal fees is probably well worth it, if for no other reason than the peace of mind they're able to get.
Because to be clear, it's not free to set up trusts. It's not free to maintain trusts. There's a cost to it. And a lot of times that cost is well worth it because of the benefits you garner by having a trust.
Yeah. So remember, trusts aren't about just tax planning and saving money in taxes are also about protecting the people you care about from the uncertainty that there is out there. We live in a very litigious society. You hear about people spilling a cup of coffee on themselves at McDonald's and getting these huge settlements. And we've got to weigh the control with the uncertainty for the people that you care about, because choosing the right structure, it's not about fear, it's about foresight in trying to handle this.
To see how they fit into the bigger picture of protecting your heirs, it's essential to first understand the 3 foundational legal layers of any wealthy family's estate plan. We cover that in this next video. Click here to watch.